Hey WWE group, this is Michael, and this is the final part of ECW, a hardcore retrospective, part 4. When I last left off, I was talking about how in 1998 I discovered ECW via a pay-per-view, and I was blown away. I saw half of it, and I missed the other half, and then I saw her, I think it was Hardcore Heaven 1998, and I was blown away by some of those matches that these guys had. This was full tilt boogie. These guys went out and went nuts. I will talk about some of the matches I saw, but to be honest, I mean, they did some great matches. They had some great champions, you had stars like RVD and Taz and Sabu doing their thing. You had the Dudley Boys doing their thing. You had guys like Lance Storm and Chris Candido doing their thing as well. For a full year, they would sell out pay-per-views. They didn't do one every month, unfortunately. They did like one in March. Well, technically they did one in January, but I guess the California pay-per-views companies wouldn't pick them up until Living Dangerously. So you'd have Guilty as Charged, Living Dangerously. You would have actually Living Dangerously was January, but anyways, you had like one for every other odd month. There was January, there was March, there was May, there was either July or August. They had an August card in 2008, but then it was pushed up to July. Then you had September and November. So it would be Living Dangerously, Guilty as Charged, Hardcore Heaven, Heatwave '98. You'd have Anarchy Rules, and then you have November to Remember, which inspired the ECW pay-per-view December to Dismember, which was one of the worst ever, but we'll not talk about that. So they would do all these different matches, and for about a good 16 months, you'd have all these great matches every other time, and that was it. And so in 1999, excuse me, 98 was a great year. 99, when Taz won the title, a lot of things changed going into from spring, summer, and into the fall. Two things happened. At the end of August 1999, ECW secured television deal rights where they would be able to show ECW on TNN, the Nashville network, which became Spike TV. And to a degree, it was cool because I could watch ECW on Friday. I could watch WWE. You can watch ECW on Fridays. You can watch WWF on Thursdays and Monday nights, and then also Monday nights and Wednesday nights you can watch WCW. So you had technically wrestling, throughout the week. And then of course there were the spin-off shows like Shotgun Saturday Night, Live Wire, and WWF Superstars. And WCW had WCW Saturday Night. So basically, I guess you would say maybe you had wrestling all week long. It was perfect. And ECW for an hour, which wasn't for much, but it was what we could, it's what they could do. The second thing that happened was two major things happened. The Dudley Boys had just signed a contract with the WWF, so they were leaving, but yet they were still the tag team champions. And after they beat Balls Mahoney and Little Spike Dudley, they were saying, we're going to take these titles and we're going to put them on Vince McMahon's desk. Tommy Dreamer came out and fought for the company, even though he was outmanned. Then Raven, who quit WCW, walked out on his contract, came back to ECW, and helped Tommy beat the Dudley Boys and become the tag team champions. And the funniest thing is, they hated each other, but yet they're champions. What are you going to do? They left. And then a month later, we're seen on WWF programming. Taz, on the other hand, was still with the company, but he was approached by Vince and the company to join WWF, and he was still the heavyweight champion. So to him, he was burned out. He wanted to try something new. I mean, he was the champion for about literally the year. He just didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. No one, even though he was with the company, he was their champion. He was their man. They offered him a lot of money. He's got a family to support, and, he had to do what he had to do. So Taz dropped the belt in a triple threat between Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome. He was the first man pinned, and he left the ring. And then 2 months later, he came back and lost to RVD. So basically, he just jobbed to everybody and then walked right out of ECW. Meanwhile, ECW is doing phenomenal business, but at the beginning of 2000, it was starting to look bleak. ECW was the number one rated show. Sorry, I thought I heard something. ECW was the number one rated show on TNN, but the thing was they couldn't get any publicity. They couldn't get any publicity. They couldn't get any TV time. They couldn't get no commercials. They couldn't get anything. And they basically were just the number one program on the network, and yet they can't get no promotion. They can't get no timing. They can't get TV. The only time you'd know you're watching ECW is if you turn on the TV and basically Joey Styles like, "Hey, hello everyone, I'm Joey Styles and welcome to ECW on TNN." There was no phone calls, no radio mentions, or nothing. I mean, I got lucky and found it on my TV guide saying ECW wrestling premieres on TNN. That was it. So you have basically, the company put no money in with the TV deal. They're on TV, but yet there's no sponsors. There's basically no promotion at all from TNN. TNN basically just left them high and dry. I don't know what happened with the money, but I know Paul obviously did something wrong. And with everything going on, it's just like, okay, now what? So the thing is, also they had two different shows. They had a stupid show with Jigo and Liddy and some Coke model called 18 Wheels of Justice, which was lame. And then after that, they had a Roller Jam show, which ironically enough, the Roller Jam, whatever the hell those guys are, that same studio, 5 years later, 5 to 6 years later, would ultimately become the home of TNA Impact for years. In Orlando Studios. Universal Orlando Studios. It would be there. So just a twist of fate, ironically enough. The Roller Jam show lasts 1 year. They leave. Next thing you know, TNA, a few years later, TNA will come and take that over that spot. And then next thing you know, boom, we're on Spike again. So it was kind of unfair for what would happen. These guys are busting their ass and the company isn't even helping them. It's just like, okay, you made it. You're on your own. We're not going to give you no money to promote their product. So have at it. And while this is happening, the ECW going through dire straits. A lot of people's checks were bouncing. The boys are wrestling, and so they're not making as enough money as they would in WWF or WCW, and their checks are bouncing. And some of these guys really had no choice what to do. It's like, hey, I can't pay you this week, but if you want, I can give you extra cash by the end of the night to give you what you want. And some of these guys were mad. That's why they all bailed. Bam Bam Bigelow just left WCW because it ain't worth it. Shane Douglas would leave ultimately, and like the Dudleys and Taz, why am I sticking around? This guy's not paying me, and when he does pay me and I get a check, they're bouncing. There was even a story where like 14 of the wrestlers all got the checks, they all got in cars, like carpooled, whatever, and drove all the way to a bank outside of Brooklyn in New York, waiting for the bank to be open so that they can all cash in their checks. That way to make sure that the check wouldn't bounce, because it's just like, okay, I'm here. Sign my check, and of course, the moment they got their money, it's like, okay, fine, so that way the check wouldn't bounce and they get their money back. I've had a check bounce on me. It's not cool. It sucked. It is kind of a pain in the ass. Also, it's just, some of these guys were, basically working for peanuts, not to mention their living expenses. Spike Dudley said, there are days I lived on rice and tuna fish, and it kind of sucked for me because I love this company, but yet I'm not getting paid dick. And when you have a company, you're working for a company you love and you're not getting paid as much as you think you should, it does kind of suck. I've had this experience happen to me before, and I love the job, but I wasn't getting paid what I thought I was getting paid, and I wasn't getting the hours, so I ultimately had to leave. I'm still friends with the owner, but it sucked. But that's not about my personal life. Isn't on this. It's all about ECW. I'm sorry. Lance Storms told Paul, "Hey, my check bounced." He had a clause in his contract. 3 strikes and you're out. So he would say that 3 strikes. If my third, if this check my check bounces for the third time, I'm leaving, and that's it. So basically, he just said, hey, my check bounced for the third time. I'm not leaving, but I want you to know if my check does bounce again, I quit and I walk out. That's it. And then he said right then his checks were FedEx to him every day. Not every day, but his checks were FedEx to him every time. And all his checks were cleared until the last one, his last show, which bounced. And then ultimately, he went to the summer of 2000. He ultimately left to WCW, became the Canadian champion, the United States variation. Well, he was the U.S. champ, but then he became the Canadian champ. Anyways. So that was it. They're going through dire straits. A lot of the boys are mad because their checks are bouncing. And of course, one of the most controversial things is their heavyweight champion just screwed them over and just said, fuck it, I'm out, and took the belt with him. Mike Awesome went to the new and improved Monday Nitro and beat up Kevin Nash and said, I'm here to do what's right from business. They had to send the cops over to Nitro to make sure he wouldn't throw the belt away, because Eric Bischoff says, you want to join my company, put that belt in the fucking trash can. And Paul's like, no, dude, if you do that, I will sue your ass, Awesome. You're not that fucking great. To the point where they both were basically made a deal. Mike Awesome, who was basically a newly signed WCW wrestler, would fight Taz of all people, a newly signed WWF wrestler, and for the ECW championship at an ECW event at the Mariah Egyptian Room in Indianapolis, Indiana. My friend actually was there at that event. He saw it. He said that the event was badass. He went there with some friends. It was all during spring break. They went, and basically, Mike Awesome was just wearing sweatpants, and a hoodie. When that under that he was just wearing his wrestling gear because he knew he was waiting in his car. He knew that the fans would have jumped him or Paul would have gave him shit for it. But you've all seen the match. He went in there, did his best, tapped out, literally jumped in his car along with Judge Jeff Jones, grabbed his clothes, and got the fuck out of Dodge. And he never stepped foot in the ECW arena again. And, a lot of people branded him the ECW Judas, and it's kind of a shame he got a bum rap, but, money's money, you gotta do where you gotta go. To the point where, anyways, like I said, dire straits. ECW stopped running their program during, I think it was, may not be right, but I could have been sworn it was September 22nd, 2000 was the last ECW show, and then that Monday, WWF took over, and they brought Raw over. So they made a deal. So TNA made a deal with Vince McMahon where he can bring over Raw from USA all the way over to the TNN network and show Monday Night Raw exclusively, which meant ECW was out on their ass. They didn't know what they were doing. And so by that time, they had just finished doing their last pay-per-view, where Justin Credible defended his title against Jerry Lynn and he lost. But after that, it's like, well, what are you going to do now? We have no TV deal. We're trying to do everything we can to save the company, Paul is basically doing everything he can to save the company, but to little to no prevail. The last ECW show they did was a pay-per-view, Living Dangerously, at the legendary Hammerstein Ballroom in New York. And after that, they couldn't do no shows, and Rob Van Dam and Rhino had to go on the website to see if there was any, ECW shows, and when it was all said and done, there was nothing. So, in March, they had their last show, and then after that, it was done. ECW was done, and a lot of people back then were mad at Paul, and Paul just basically just cut his losses and ended up joining the WWF as a color commentator. Most of the guys whose contract the company was bought out by WWF, and then a month later, WCW was bought out by WWF, and the guys whose contracts were still available ended up working for Vince after all. 4 years later, after the invasion, we got a special ECW One Night Only, which is One Night Stand, which I thought was one of the best ECW farewell shows ever. It was like a special farewell. Then they did another one, which was so-so. The TNA Hardcore Justice ECW reunion show was a joke, and the Extreme Reunion show hosted by Shane Douglas was just one of the worst I ever saw. I actually saw this on a DVD a friend of mine, a buddy of mine purchased. I saw it, I thought it was one of the worst things ever. Pro wrestlers, came up, were too pilled up. Sabu was in the main event, he couldn't even show up. Shane Douglas is insulting the crowd, even though he knows that he screwed up and people yelling refunds. Raven insults the fans. It's like, well, why did you cut? And he doesn't even wrestle. He's promoted as one of the guys to wrestle, and he doesn't wrestle. So it's like, so why'd you do anything? So why'd you even show up in the first place, you fucking asshole? So, yeah, to me, I think doing the ECW Extreme Reunion shows are just done. ECW is gone. We loved it, but to me, you can't bring it back. You tried bringing it back, and it was just a watered-down, kiddie-friendly version. It was awful. And then you turned it into NXT. So, to me, I just say ECW is gone, but not forgotten. Thank you, ECW, for everything you've given us. To wrestling promoters out there, please do not bring the brand back. It is done and over with, and Vince will sue your ass. To me, there'll always be ECW. 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 This is Michael. Thank you guys so much.